speaker. And I wanted to thank Erin Peets. She is the grant manager at Elder Law and Advocacy Center in Southeast Michigan for assisting us with today and tomorrow's webinar. We do have a second series of webinars that will happen on May 12 and 13, and Tracy and Erin will tell you a little bit more about those toward the end of the program as well, but we'd love to have you join us next week to round out our elder abuse prevention series. Right. Our speaker today is Tracy Rowans. She is a graduate of the University of Michigan School of Art and Wayne State University Law School. She is currently a staff attorney at Elder Law and Advocacy Center at Neighborhood Legal Services, Michigan, providing advice, services, and representation to older adults and their caregivers in a wide range of poverty law matters, focusing on housing, consumer finance, public benefits, disability, employment, guardianship, and probate issues. She has participated in coordinating and providing law-related education and community outreach services, and she is a member of the State Bar of Michigan's Elder Law and Disability Rights Sections Council and State Bar of Michigan. Welcome, Tracy. We're delighted to have you on today.
Well, thank you very much, Stephanie. I'm excited to be here. Hello, everyone. I am Tracy Rowans. As Stephanie mentioned, I am an attorney who works for Neighborhood Legal Services, Elder Law and Advocacy Center, and we're a nonprofit organization that started in Detroit, providing services in 1996. I am joined today by a colleague, another attorney, Erin Peets. Erin is, as I say, another attorney at Neighborhood and Legal Services Elder Law and Advocacy Center, but she's also my producer. She's here today to keep me moving. I can talk a lot. And she's here to remind me that I have a specific period of time that I'm allotted. And I want to stay on point so the information I give to you is complete in what was intended. So, and the other reason she's here, we being attorneys, here's my disclaimer. At any point during this presentation, we may be interrupted by a barking dog. I seem to hear some noise in the background. In the event that the barking is not instantly quelled, Erin will be able to jump in. She will hop onto the slides and carry on the conversation until I'm able to resolve the issue and certainly mute the situation, because we know the show must go on. But
Thank
anyway,
you for your confidence there, Tracy. Thank you.
Okay, and the other thing is, if you do have questions and you're putting them in the chat box, Erin is going to sort of manage that aspect so that when she has a clump of questions that may be interrelated, you know, she will provide them to me. The goal is really to answer your questions when I finally do finish talking. Okay, so with that said, let me start talking. Next slide. So as I said, Erin and I are from Neighborhood Legal Services. This is a nonprofit organization started in Detroit, originally called Wayne County Neighborhood Legal Services. And the goal was to provide services to those with the greatest need. And it has become a place that has created a niche that we now call Elder Law and Advocacy Center. The Elder Law and Advocacy Center, I just want to say, is funded through grants through the Older American Act. basically by way of Detroit Area Agency on Aging, the AAA, the Senior Alliance, known as TSA, and the Area Agency on Aging, 1B, which is AAA 1B. Okay, and what we do at Elder Law and Advocacy Center is we provide services and education specifically to Wayne County residents who are 60 and over. We also will, when we advise on legal documents, sometimes draft legal documents because legal planning and certain legal documents, two of which that we'll be discussing, or I will be discussing tomorrow, everyone should have, okay? So since we feel that way, we like to be able to provide it to our client, okay? And again, Wayne County residents over the age of 60. We also assist caregivers of older clients because this is a great need in our community. It's difficult to be a caregiver of an older individual. So where we can assist, we do. The way we offer most of this information is through a monthly seminar that we provide, and it's aptly titled First Tuesday because it occurs on the first Tuesday of every month. And that is how we connect with a lot of our clients. So the fact that our client base is the elder community, is the over 60 population, I am the perfect person to talk to you about elder abuse. Next slide. The reason I'm here today is, and I always like to start a presentation by letting you in on what I would like you to retain at the end of this presentation. I want you to have an overview of the types of abuse that we see regularly. And I'm not just talking about members of Elder Law and Advocacy Center, where we are closer to communities where elder abuse is occurring. It's everywhere, and it affects everyone. I just want to let you know that this presentation is directed to you in your many capacities as an individual, as a family member, a neighbor, and a community professional. My hope is that when you recognize elder abuse in any of those capacities, that maybe this information will assist you to recognize it and know to report it. I also want you to become familiar with the details of the recently passed, anxiously awaited Financial Exploitation and Protection Act that will be implemented this September, as it's likely to affect a majority of you and your customers, clients. And finally, what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to focus on some of the specific considerations that are required by the Act that that financial individuals, financial representatives will be asked to refer to use as their guide as they proceed with the steps necessary as required by the Act. And that reason is because those specific considerations are very important, exceedingly important to all of our community members, most likely to your family, to your friends, etc., your clients. And in addition to some of those specific considerations that the Act points out, I'm going to suggest adding maybe one or two. Okay, so that in a nutshell is where I'm going to take you and hopefully where you end up. And with no further ado, Erin, the next slide. So what is elder abuse? And I know most of us have a sense of it, right? We're familiar with abuse in general, domestic abuse, domestic violence abuse, sexually or sexual abuse, etc. But elder abuse is, again, its own little carve out because the older community is so vulnerable. And that's all I'm going to say at this point. And I'll talk about vulnerability as we go forward. Now, the absolute definition of elder abuse is, as you can see, the intentional mistreatment or harming of an older person. And I don't know if you'll be surprised, but it is rampant. It is prevalent in our society, and it affects all social strata. There are social factors that can put elders at risk, and simply the aging process itself can put a target on some people's back. Next slide. So elder abuse over time has come to be looked at as three different categories of abuse. Okay, and I'm a big fan of definitions because all the words matter, okay, and they communicate something specific. So with that said, elder abuse is divided into a category known as abuse, which is the harm or the threatened harm to an adult's health or welfare caused by another person. Neglect is the second category. And this is sometimes unnoticed. And we'll talk about that. Neglect is the inability or failure to provide adequate food, shelter, clothing, medical care, and payment of bills. Those are the activities of daily living, the necessities of daily living. And the third, which I believe that you are specifically as a group, if you haven't been sensitized to exploitation, now you will be, and that is the misuse of an adult's funds, property, or personal dignity by another person. So now we're going to go on further. And as you see, it's like a Russian doll. We just broke abuse, elder abuse, into three categories. And then lo and behold, within abuse itself, there are different manifestations, different types, physical, emotional, psychological, verbal, and sexual. Now, you won't necessarily be able to see signs of this abuse that are, that will jump out and say, emotionally abused, or, well, physical abuse is a little bit easier because it can be visual, but sometimes you have to use the signs that you would look for emotional, psychological, verbal abuse in order to identify sexual abuse or physical abuse, because seniors, elders may be expressing either a need for help or the fact that something is wrong, not by coming out and saying it, not by showing it on a sleeve, but by including it in how they're communicating to people and how they appear. Next slide. So this is an easier identification. Physical signs of abuse, you can see a bruise, you can see sores. If there's blood where there shouldn't be blood, if there's, this is not on the slide but should be, but if you enter your neighbor, your older neighbor's home, and you see that it looks like things are out of place, not just messy, but like someone has been throwing things around, like something has happened in this room. Those are signs to look a bit deeper, okay? You may already have suspected that there is an abuse of some kind. But now you want to look a little bit further, and how might you do that? Next slide. And I find, even though emotional behavioral abuse is a category on its own, like I said, I find that this is a key to helping to identify the other categories of abuse, okay? And this is even true in regard to, we'll be getting there, but financial exploitation. If you are familiar with the individual, have there been changes? You notice, if it's a friend or family member, that they're sleeping in a lot, that formerly they used to wake up at 6 a.m. and, wave at you when you were getting your paper. Do people get papers? Whatever. So if there is an activity that, or a change in behavior that you notice, if you notice it, it's a change. So keep it in mind. Individuals who are suffering abuse, elder abuse, and all abuse, may be experiencing fear and anxiety, and they may be showing it in different ways. And again, it might be different in ways different than how you may have communicated with this person before. A person may be testy, more testy. I don't have time for this. Let's get this over with. I got to get this done. If the person before had been rather mellow and, oh, I have plenty of time, that is a sign. Now, fear and anxiety can come out in many, many ways. Shying away. When a voice is raised, looking around to see if someone is yelling at that person. So again, we're looking at behaviors that might be signs, okay? And the opposite might happen. Instead of having people act out, you might have people repress. You might have, and now I'm talking about maybe your customers, your clients. They don't want to talk to you, but it's more of I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk. Or you'll ask them questions and they just won't answer. They'll just sort of drift off and maybe change the subject. Changing of subject is a key. It is a sign. And often you will find that when you have a person who's experiencing either physical or emotional abuse. But what you may be most aware of is depression. Now, how do you identify depression? Depression, I would say most of us suffer from depression. Again, it's that difference between how a person represented themselves maybe a year ago, or for as long as you've known this person, outgoing, and now kind of negative, kind of quiet, kind of sad. There are reasons, and as we'll get to in a bit, you need to, if you're concerned, dig a little deeper. Ask a few questions. What's new? Why, you seem different. Anyway, now we're going to, switch slides, and we're going to talk about a different form of abuse. And this is an interesting form of abuse. This is where there is a lack of action on behalf of the caregiver or the family member who may be responsible, who may either live with the elder or visit the elder, who's maybe responsible for bringing the groceries, etc. Neglect is something that it can occur, in a person's home, but also we see it a lot in facilities. We see it in nursing facilities. We see it in adult foster homes. And again, what it is that maybe someone isn't paying attention to that senior the way that senior should be paid attention to. All right. And before I go to the next slide, I just want to mention that there's neglect that's self-imposed, which is an omission of action. And that's what I just described. But there's also self-neglect. And this goes hand in hand with if you have someone who's behaviorally abused, emotionally abused, it could then become fodder for self-neglect, right? And this, I think everyone can, grasp what self-neglect is, but, the inability to, or the lack of ability to to care for oneself, to not notice, or to just let it go. And I don't know if you've seen neglected, self-neglected persons' homes, but go to the bathroom, take a look. Has it been cleaned? Does it look like anyone has been using the sink to clean up? There are signs, and now we can go to the next slide, that we also need to look for. And this isn't just in nursing homes. We see them in individuals' home, either through neglect because the caregiver, you know, I don't need to shower him. Why should I have to shower him? He can shower himself. Or, you know, I'm not going to change the bedclothes. Why do I need to change the bedclothes? I'm busy. I'm tired. And that would be the perspective of the caregiver. It gets hard. It gets difficult. And so neglect begins and then it rolls. It becomes bigger and bigger. And the person becomes more and more neglected. And with a senior, this is all the more important because there's medications that aren't being taken. There's, you know, if there are the untreated bed sores, or they have medical conditions that require treatment, but, you know, for one reason or another, either because another person is not providing it or providing the ability or transportation for the elder to get there, that it could, okay, become neglect and self-neglect. So all of these characteristics of abuse can start clumping together. So it's like you're pulling on a piece of thread and you think you're looking, you might have a neglect issue. You might have a neglect issue, but oh, wow, maybe there's something more. So again, the signs of neglect: hazardous and unsafe living conditions, unsanitary and unclean living conditions, and not just the bathroom, but the refrigerator is the tell-all of, I would say, neglect and self-neglect. I have had many experiences where I was surprised and horrified by what I found in a refrigerator. And there's a lot of reasons, right? This is elder abuse. This is elder neglect. We have to consider those things that are pertinent to the elder. How's their vision? Can they see? Do they see that mold? I mean, I can see it as soon as I open the refrigerator. I see blue and white. I do not see any cheddar. I see blue and white cheese. And just general residue from the inability to clean up after someone's cooked, if they've bothered to clean up, you know. So pans in a sink, I think you may be catching on, and maybe I'm going into this a little bit too dramatically, so I'll move on. Now we're here at financial exploitations, and I have to tell you, I'm so excited that that you are here and I am speaking to you, because financial exploitation has skyrocketed. It's out of control. And it's very difficult to identify if a senior is being exploited. And the kinds of exploitations are so many. So here, I'm going to read the definition for you, that financial exploitation by a person with control or proximity to the elder individual, with or without documents. This might be something that you are or will be concerned about, not necessarily for yourself or your family, but for your clients and your customers, okay? People who have control over individuals are capable of playing what we call undue influence, take advantage of individuals, and for the majority of the cases, it might be a family member. It could be a caregiver who's, trying to get some documents changed, so maybe they can shift some of those monies around. But it can also be new people new to the situation, maybe a new roommate who shows up. Now, that's the type of financial exploitation that involves an actual person in the mix. There's also the identity theft scams that are rampant. And these run the gamut. I think we can go to the next slide. So some of the signs, I may not have mentioned all of these, but some of these are happening online, okay? They may be the result of an algorithm. The senior may have fallen for a scam and given information, and now they are, what do you know, paying for automatic deductions every month for something that they're not really sure what it is, but it sounded good and they must have needed it. So in your position as financial professionals, not only will you be having in-person, face-to-face contacts and looking for or noticing signs of financial exploitations, but also there is, this new electronic version where a senior may not even recognize just how deeply their finances have been affected. Many have a sense that they do, but some won't even notice, okay? So, and at the, in the banking world, you're going to be noticing, I hope, you're going to be noticing that, accounts are getting drained, or certain large withdrawals are being made on a regular basis. And they may be tied to, an email withdrawal. And so this is, this is all, at least for me in the elder law world, I haven't been as involved with how deviant and how prevalent financial exploitation can be. Generally, seniors may notice, I don't know if actually, I take that back. I don't think seniors necessarily bring it to our attention that large funds from accounts are missing or changed. And they may not care, right? Because they may be having some assistance from people who have their card number, who are, of course, acting in their best interest. So they may not be looking. They may not see it. And other people, friends, family, they may not see it either. So it's really those of you who, can see the accounts, who can put an alert when unusual activity starts. It's to you now that we are happy to look as possible as possible protectors, so that through the financial process, elder abuse and elder financial exploitation will be easier to identify, and that it is identified. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide. I don't want to get hung up. I know I'm so excited about financial exploitation, and I'm talking to people who might be able to do something about it. So other things that perhaps you would see, and I'm sure you would, signs of financial exploitation would be the unpaid bills or documents that are provided to the bank that, you've met that person before, she's been coming to your bank for years, and that's not her signature. And it's brought to you by a niece who hasn't been around much because you're familiar a bit with your customers' comings and goings and family and who usually brings this person to the bank, etc. And you recognize that this is a different person. And you may want to find out a little bit more information about that person. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so, and if you have more questions about signs of financial exploitation, etc., let me know, and I will, we can discuss them afterwards. Right now, what I want to talk about is, because it's really on my mind, is that something new is happening. Initiative is, it's not just underway, I mean, it's well underway, to combat what the Attorney General of Michigan recognized as a huge problem, that there are thousands of reported victims of elder abuse in Michigan. And yet we know there's probably an equal amount that are not reported. And why is that? And why is it necessary to talk about elder abuse? Victims are uncomfortable reporting. I mean, this is true of any victim. I mean, in the criminal world, in the, if someone has commit a crime against you, it's not necessarily the first thing you want to do to say, oh, I was taken advantage of, oh, help me. Seniors may be very proud that they don't need assistance. They're fine, they're doing great, because quite frankly, there's a chunk of society that would like seniors to just, behave and do what they're told. And this is coming from, family members who may or may not have time to interact with this individual. And so it's understandable that an elder individual may not want to come forward and alert this, okay? Now, we understand why the victims may be uncomfortable, and there could be, further reasons why they're uncomfortable. If they reported it, if they even knew where to report it, maybe that would be worse for them. Ooh. So victims we cannot count on. And when it comes to other people, when it comes to the community around us, even those people who, they're caring individuals and they see their neighbors and they see changes, and they may see comings and goings of people who, family members who've moved in with an elder, and wonder, gee, they're around the house all day, they don't have a job. How are they managing there? And oh yes, they brought, their children. So some people are well aware that maybe something is happening, but they don't want to get involved, okay? They don't want to have anything to do with it. They don't want to, they know the people, they live next door to the people, or they go to church with those people, or, it's a friend of a friend of a friend who you see on a regular basis. And every time you see them, you think, they're just going downhill. And that's what happens if seniors are experiencing any form of abuse that we've talked about. It takes a toll. So a lot of people are just not comfortable. They don't want to have any conflict at all. And what's important, what everyone should know, what you should tell everybody, that you run into, and I'm sure you will, as soon as you leave this presentation, you will run up to someone and say, did you know elder abuse was a crime? It is a criminal act. It's a crime. When we see crimes, we should report crimes. And right now, our sensitivity level about reporting and seeing, and I'm not talking about reporting something that, you're not really, you need a little bit more information before to make a report, but where you are staring at abuse, all right? If you are looking at an older neighbor who won't let you in the door because she's embarrassed, she doesn't want you to see how dirty the apartment is, and she's lost so much weight because she's not eating, and you haven't seen her daughter lately, and gee, her daughter's the one who brings her food. Therein lies where the considerations and the determinations of more likely than not come into play. And at that point, you need to report, okay? So how you report, it's easy. It's surprisingly easy. you can contact, and I'm going to give you, the breakdown here, in the community, the police department. If you think you're seeing physical abuse, you may want to call the police department, or definitely Adult Protective Services, known as APS. I'm sure you're familiar with that term. There's now a question hotline, which I believe, I'll have to check on this, but I believe it's associated with the Michigan Attorney General's Elder Law and Task Force. And that number is on the left at the bottom, the abuse number. But you can also call the Michigan Attorney General. And what has happened, which is really great, is that there has been a movement to try to significantly attack elder abuse and financial exploitation. And I'll get to that in a minute. But you can also call if you're in a facility, if you have a loved one in a nursing home, and it may not be your neighbor. It might be, it may not be your relative who isn't receiving care and looks like, no one's really come around to assist them. It might be the bedmate, the next door person. But if you see that there's signs of abuse, signs of neglect, then reach out to the in the licensed facility world, reach out to the long-term care ombudsman. And I don't know if you know who that is or what that role is, but it is someone who is employed by the state, who monitors and responds to the needs and cares of individuals who are living in long-term care facilities or adult foster care facilities. And it's always a good thing to contact them if you want to identify that there's a problem, or if you have questions. They will help you. Also, LARA, which is the Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Office. You'd have to have a specific need to report to LARA. But primarily, local police, call 911. This is a crime. Call Adult Protective Services. If you think it's a dangerous situation and your neighbor or your aunt or your mother shouldn't be in that situation, pick up the phone. Now, it is possible, and for those of you who are savvy phone people, you do not have to tell APS who you are or why you're calling, but they'll get it off your phone. So dial anonymously, dial *67. This way, even though you don't want to get involved, this is how you can do both. You can respond to your neighbors, your families, etc., the seniors who are about you, and give the level of involvement you're comfortable with. And if it's just an anonymous phone call, that's a step. Okay, so we know where to report. Now I'm getting back to, remember I was talking about the 70,000 known victims of elder abuse. That number was really researched, and I don't know if our Attorney General personally crunched those numbers, but at her request, those numbers were crunched, and they were unacceptable. And something that's very unusual happened. Our Attorney General gathered stakeholders from organizations throughout the state who interact with, elderly people. And what they're trying to do is band together so that there is, I would say, a holistic approach to solving this problem. So doctors, nurses, they have been reporters of abuse for quite a while. But what this group, and I don't know if this group specifically identified it, but it was discussed and recognized that that financial institutions may be similar in a way to physicians and nurses in the ability to see into a financial situation with an elder and identify that something's going on there. I just want to mention, I wish you could read this long list. Everyone who's anybody is on it. Law enforcement, sheriff's department, NBA is on it.
We're on it. We're good.
Oh, we're on it. Oh yeah, we're good. Yeah. Okay, but there's a lot of, all the legal aids are on this. So there is this attempt for all of us to look at a problem and try to solve it. And it's because, the financial institutions are in a unique, utterly unique position to find this, to see it, and to do something about it. Next slide, please. So what they did, what this group did was to, and since Erin is an actual member of the task force, she may have to correct me, but I don't know if it was members of this task force that crafted this act or were responsible for providing information to the proponents of the bill that was eventually approved by both houses and signed into law. And without further ado, I say that a lot. I just want to introduce you to the typed title of this act, which is Financial Exploitation and Prevention Act. For some, it's FEPA. For others, it's FEPA. We'll see in time which wins out. I don't know which way I'm leaning at this point, but this bill was the direct result of Dana Nessel's Elder Law and Abuse Task Force. This was one initiative out of 9 that have been identified. I believe 2 have been checked off, and this is one of them. This was approved and signed by the governor on December 30th last year, and it is going to be implemented. It'll be law as of September 26, 2021. So this is a great thing. This is a wonderful tool. So let's look at it, because it's, I think, important for you to understand what does the act actually say? What are you going to need to know? And how are you supposed to get this information in order to do the job? So next slide. So well, of course, I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to say this. One of the the best things about the act is that it, again, defines terms, which makes it easier to prosecute. It makes it easier to put a framework of investigation around. And the first definition here, financial exploitation, the fraudulent, illegal, unauthorized, or improper use of another's financial resources for one's own benefit. Okay? That's it. We now have something that we can use to prosecute. And the other thing that it does is that it identifies which financial exploitations are covered by the Act. And this I may need to learn more about. Again, it's new, but there are only, FIPA only applies to those specific activities of financial exploitation. And the third definition that's really important is that of the vulnerable adult. Now, it doesn't say the vulnerable elder adult. It says the vulnerable adult. And a vulnerable adult is anyone who's unable to protect themselves from financial exploitation due to mental or physical impairment or advanced aged. And it always can be a combination of them. Now, one thing I just want to point out, because this is important to attorneys, to prosecutors, the fact that age is not defined is, it's helpful in two ways. And the first is that if they had pulled a number and say 72 that's the age. Anyone over 72 is of advanced age. Therefore, anyone who's 72 is vulnerable. But that's just not true. And what could happen as a result of something like that is, senior citizen, not senior citizens, we try never to say senior citizen, and yet it just comes out. But, older adults in our area, at 72, they're crisp, they're clear. Aging is individual. We cannot say that because you're 82, you're vulnerable. So, my father, who's 96 and sharp as a tack until 92, I would have said 92, he's vulnerable. At 90, nope, wasn't vulnerable. And why that's important is because someone could take advantage of the fact that he meets that criteria, and therefore maybe they may think he needs a guardian. Well, he's of advanced age, he's vulnerable, and yet he doesn't. But someone could use that bright line as a sword and not a shield. And it could harm our elder instead of protect, which is what this act is supposed to do. And the other thing, by not putting an age in, it allows for people who are experiencing things at an earlier age, say in their 60s, which to me, I don't even know why 60 is even considered an older adult, really. But anyway, off of that. But you see that it might not allow someone in the financial world if I was 60 and if I was 60 to be protected even though I'm not 72, all right? And if there's if the prosecutor is trying to go after the people who took advantage of me, and heck, I'm 60, they're not going to be able to prosecute under FEPA, okay? So we want to keep a vague gray area so that prosecution and I know it would be easier for, I'm assuming here that it would be easier, for the financial institution, the banking institution, yep, anyone over this, that's a problem, flag their accounts. And unfortunately, no. And FEPA, fortunately, codifies that there is no age bright line. Carry on. Okay, now, FEPA. So it is an act, and it spells out in detail what, in this case, the financial institutions must do. And primarily, it's the financial institutions who will be creating the procedures, the how-to, what needs to be done, and it's not insignificant because it's not just about, okay, I think I got something, what do I do about it? It's financial institution has to take ownership of providing you all with skills so that you become sensitive. And you may be sensitive now. I am not downplaying that. You've been in this field however long you have, and you've been interacting. And that's how we build the awareness of, or the observance of something's not right. That's what you're looking at. That is, in a nutshell, what elder abuse is. It starts with something's not right. And what financial institutions must do are on the right-hand side. They have to, all right, they are tasked with providing you with education on recognizing the common signs of financial exploitation and how to recognize it. Also, what the current federal advisory information is. So altogether, provide you with a background that you're comfortable with that you can bring to the table or bring to an investigation when you believe you've identified something. It's suspicious. There's some suspicious facts, and it's also possible via the electronic algorithms that, and I talk about this a lot because I don't even know, do you really use algorithms and track finances? I probably don't even know. You have to. Anyway, but by doing that, you can uncover a possible elder abuse situation without any interaction at all with the individual. That's amazing. It's great. But it's also very, very powerful. And I'll get to that in a bit. So, and one of the things, and I think this is where my knowledge of how you do things is not, it doesn't exist actually. So you can fill me in on it maybe later, but I don't know if banks, if bankers have had the ability to freeze accounts on the basis of a suspicion. Or whether there have been rules around it or what have you. But now there will be, and if there were before, they will be incorporated into this process. Okay, now there's all the training that you're going to get. And that training, why is it important? Because, you know, well, I don't know. Many of us have had to go through training for stuff and, you know, you used it a little bit, but, you know, it was training. You had it, you took it, you did it, and then you did your work. In this particular case, and I'm sure other people would say, you know, it's always the case, but the training is integral to how you are going to respond and interact with this act. Because what this act says is that, do I want to go to the next slide? I'm going to go to the next slide and then we might bounce back. But if you want to go to the next slide, this is the identified FEPA process. I'm actually liking saying both of them. Anyway, the process is, and forgive me, I reduced you to an acronym. If a financial institution suspects financial exploitation, they are to investigate all available facts. Now, at this point, I do not know, I don't know that the guidance on this or that the brochures on this have been developed. I don't know. I have a feeling that they're going to be developed by individual institutions. But anyway, at this point, all the act says is step one, the financial institution is to investigate all available facts. Well, what does that mean? So hopefully at some point there will be guidance on what do you have to check? Is there going to be a checklist where, you know, you think you see this, but do you need to have this in order to do that? So hopefully that's to come. So I want you to be looking for that kind of information and that kind of training. But also, again, I think you have been able to freeze accounts and delays. I don't know if that is new per se, but what I do know is that while the investigation, the internal, the FBI investigation is going on, that that the financial institution will have the authority to make transactions, continue to make transactions to preserve the health, safety, and well-being of a suspected victim of abuse. Now, that's interesting. And the act actually says may. I highlighted may. It doesn't say shall. It says may. And I just recently had, and this is going to be a very short story, I had a client who came to me and had me draft a durable power of attorney for her. She knew that she needed assistance. and that she wanted assistance with her banking, and she identified someone who she trusted. And we talked, and I found that she had the requisite requirement to execute legal documents. And so I drafted it, she signed it, and it was rejected by the financial institution. And so that was interesting, as I happened to be working on this presentation. So they have frozen the accounts. And what they have done is they have allowed the agent under power of attorney, because he really is the agent under power of attorney, to go to the bank, and he can ask the bank for a cashier's check to pay his mother's rent. And that's great. But the bank is not allowing, is not making that concession to pay her other bills. And so the agent under power of attorney's son is paying both his bills and his mother's bills in the interim while this freeze is on. So what I'm trying to say is that, actually, I don't know if I was ready to say what I wanted to say, but I'll say it. The act of freezing accounts, especially a senior citizen, can have consequences. And I know we know, I mean, it goes without saying, it's going to have consequences. But for seniors, those consequences might be very difficult and might actually cause a level of harm, definitely anxiety, until the investigation is resolved. So that's all I want to say. I do think that this is a very important paragraph. I think it's important that financial institutions recognize that there are important bills that have to be paid and there are consequences. But I want you all to recognize that you want to consider that as you go through the investigation, okay? So if the financial institution goes through the investigation and they don't find it, it's not there, nothing substantial, nothing meaty, gotta have a little meat. So they determine that there is no need for the freeze, that there is no financial exploitation, and the accounts can be unfrozen. Now, if after the investigation, the opposite is found and financial exploitation is still suspected, I mean, there's things that don't make sense, or detected, meaning facts, like evidence, like we see money coming out and going out, and then that freeze can continue. You can move the slide, Erin, sorry. So what, it's interesting. Let's go backwards, please. 2 slides.
Just so you know, in the interest of time, we have.
Yes, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So what the Act says is that if there is evidence or strong suspicion, then what the employee will do, and it may not be that employee, the guidance from the Act is that the financial institution has to identify the employee who will then prepare a report. And that report will be sent to either Adult Protective Services if you feel that the individual is in danger, in need, and may need to be removed from a situation, or if it is perhaps just financial on the algorithm scheme of fraud, then they might just send it, or it's your determination to send it to the legal enforcement contact. So recognize that once it's been identified, there's going to be an internal investigation. As soon as that internal investigation decides that, yes, there is enough, there's something, this isn't just, it may be, no, there's something suspicious enough or evidence has been detected to prepare the report, and the report will have to contain where is it? It has to contain the alleged victim's name, the contact person's name, and facts or evidence that support reporting. Okay, so once that is done, and the reason I put 2 blocks of information on the same slide is the information about common types of financial exploitations, the signs, etc. That's what's feeding your decision if you are the report maker, to determine, is it going to the legal enforcement or is it going to APS? But it's also determining that there is indeed a possible crime. When you get to the possible crime situation, the Act says that you must specifically consider the relevant financial information, as well as the safety of yourself as the reporter, of the institution, and others who are involved. You must consider that. Now, what I'm advocating is that you also want to consider the elder adult, okay? You're worried about their safety, of course, but what about the bigger picture? What about their finances? What about, how is this going to affect if we turn off the funds? What is going to happen first? Is she not going to have a phone for a couple months? Because you'll see in a minute that this process, once started, it isn't automatic. It doesn't happen immediately. Nothing happens immediately. So an account could be frozen for two or more weeks. And that's a lot. Remember, there are no other assets for older adults. Generally, it's Social Security, unless they have securities, et cetera, that they're, able to access if they are not frozen. So you want to look at the person as as a person and not just a transaction. Because once a report goes into APS, once a report goes into legal enforcement, it is going to have the ripple effect consequences for your client who you're trying to protect. Next slide. And we're going to pass right through them. Now, one back. It's quick. I promise it's quick. So here's the thing. Because of this act, you will be assured that your identities are protected, the institutions, you as an employee of a financial institution, the institution is protected. Generally, the victim's name is only disclosed if it goes to court. If it's necessary to disclose your name as the reporter, then it's only if you and also the financial institution give consent for it to be disclosed. Other than that, members of the organization, members of your banks and financial services will have the ability to, in a sense, be a mandatory reporter of financial exploitation. No one, neither you nor the bank, you actually are immune. Don't read that bottom slide. You're immune from any action that may result as in the act of reporting. Next slide. I'm trying to wind it up, trying to get you going. And so the other thing, I keep saying the one thing. So now the 45th thing I want you to know is that FEPA does not say, in fact, it actually says the opposite. FEPA does not require that a report has to be filed if the financial institution, if their internal investigation identifies that financial exploitation is not occurring, it hasn't occurred, and no action is necessary. So the reason I put this slide in, and you can move on to the next one, the considerations for whether to report or not is the safety of the people. It's the well balance of the people. And it's also based on the regulations and opinions of federal law, or federal opinions, let's put it that way. Those are your considerations. And I would just like to say that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And so by filing a report, you are doing a good thing. You are trying to identify abuse. However, know that the process of the identification could take time, and your client, your customer who you're trying to protect, is not going to have access to funds. So as a last thought for you, this is a wonderful new tool. Wonderful new tools are powerful. And it's like a sword and a shield. It can protect you. It can, and it can fight you. It can harm you. So when you are making these decisions, really do consider, what are the signs of elder abuse? What is happening here? And is this in the best interest? Is there evidence? because the goal is to protect older adults. And even sometimes, and this happens, I mean, this is not just in this act, but often the help that you're calling may actually be equally harmful. So be confident, understand what elder law and elder abuse is, how to apply it, and when it really is appropriate to report, because it is appropriate to report. Just don't want it to become an on-off switch. Do the due diligence. Is there suspicion or detected financial exploitation? And that's it. I hope you're all, I can't see any of you, I can only see Erin. And she has been making some interesting faces. So I hope this was interesting to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. Looks like just a question about if the slide deck will be available to everyone. Will you be able to? Yes. Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
I said that as if I was the only one making that decision. The slide deck will be available to everyone.
We can make it available. You can either let Stephanie know, or I threw our email address up there. You can just make a request through that. We'll make it available to you. And if you have any questions
on our website,
soon we can do that. Tomorrow's presentation will not be the same as today. It will be different. We're going to be going over we'll be going over some of the legal documents that that you need to be aware of.
Great.
And if you do have any other questions, you can call, well, I would say call, but we are obviously working remotely mostly. So you can just email at the elderlaw@wcnls.org if you have questions or anything like that. Need some clarification, and then we'll try to get to it.
Great. And I'll share both their contact information when I send out the recording and a copy of the slide deck as well. But thanks so much, Erin and Tracy. Thanks everyone for joining us, and look forward to seeing you back here at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Thanks. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So you see